Today, I'm going to break down how some CBI passports could actually disrupt your banking access and travel freedom in 2026. In the second half, I'll also walk you through some real world use cases, including how certain citizenship structures may increase your risk of travel authorization refusals to the UK or the EU. And I'll also cover safer alternatives to traditional CBI programs that you can still obtain within 4 to 6 months and are generally viewed as more conventional pathways by banks and border authorities. Now, over the past decade, citizenship by investment or CBI has been marketed as the ultimate backup plan. A second passport, more freedom, more banking options, visa free travel, and in some cases, even tax optimization. But here's what almost nobody is talking about in 2026. If you're already a citizen of countries like Canada, Australia, or New Zealand, adding a second passport from places like Nauru or São Tomé, and these are just examples, the list goes on, could actually make your life harder, not easier. Now, let's start off with travel. Travel is no longer truly visa free. Now, historically, if you held a visa free passport, you could simply board a flight and enter places like the UK or the EU. Now, that's no longer how the system works. With the rollout of the UK's ETA, Electronic Travel Authorization System, and the EU's ETIAS system coming online in 2026, you now have to pre-apply for digital clearance before boarding a plane. And these systems don't check your passport. They ask you for your place of birth, your previous citizenships, and any second nationality, how you obtain the citizenship, and your travel history. So imagine this, you were born in Vancouver or Sydney, but you apply for a UK ETA using, let's say, a Nauru passport that you obtained through CBI with no residency requirement. To a human, that may sound reasonable, but to an automated border risk scoring system, that mismatch is exactly what it's trained to flag. So now, instead of instant entry approval, your application might be routed to a manual review, meaning what used to be a spontaneous weekend trip to Paris or London now becomes a pending clearance request that can take days or several weeks. Now, this is just the travel side of things. Let's discuss the banking problem and something fresh, something new in 2026 with the rollout of the CRS 2.0 is where things get serious. Now, under the previous Common Reporting Standard or the CRS 1.0, banks are required to report your tax residency, your TIN. TIN is the tax identification number, your address, and importantly, your place of birth and not your passport. So even if you open a bank account using, let's say, an STP or São Tomé and Príncipe passport, the financial institution still records that you were born in Toronto, Auckland, or Melbourne. And here's the issue. The OECD today has already warned financial institutions globally that some CBI passports may be used to disguise a person's real jurisdiction of tax residence. Because of that, banks now told to treat certain CBI programs as compliance risk indicators, and that changes how they onboard you. So today, presenting a second passport from a non-residency investment program can instantly trigger enhanced due diligence, proof of physical presence, residence requests, source of wealth investigations, and in some cases, onboarding refusals, even if everything you're doing is 100% legal. The next issue is the TIN matching and identity linkage. Many people assume that holding a second passport allows them to separate financial identities across jurisdictions. Now, that used to work 10 years ago, but today banks reconcile global TIN registries, civil birth records, sanction databases, and biometric identity systems. And because CRS reporting includes the date and place of birth, let's say a Canadian-born individual using an STP passport while declaring a tax residency in another country can easily be flagged for mismatch analysis. And once that happens, you are automatically routed into an enhanced due diligence review tiers, which often means delayed transactions, scrutiny, periodic re-KYC, or even account closures. The next one is the big one, and this is the reputational effect. And here's the subtle part. Major private banks now internally classify certain dual national clients. So you don't even know you got this passport before CRS 1.0. Now it is upgraded to CRS 2.0. New rules have been put in place, and now suddenly the banks are reclassifying your category. Now you're a dual citizen from a potentially controversial country as per the bank, based on what's told to them or programmed in their system, particularly those with investment based citizenships, as potential attempts to conceal beneficial ownership or reduce tax visibility. That doesn't mean that you are doing anything wrong, but it does mean that your client risk profile changes. You may find brokerage accounts are harder to open, transfers are taking longer to clear, or compliance reviews happen more frequently. And ironically, adding a 150K second passport may end up degrading the efficiency of your existing Canadian, Australian, or New Zealand financial life. Let's walk through a very real serious situation. Let's say you're an Australian citizen and you've recently acquired a second passport from, let's say, STP, São Tomé and Príncipe, through a citizenship by investment program. Now, on paper, nothing really changes. You still travel using your Australian passport. You'll still bank using your Australian passport. You still live in Australia. But starting in the last quarter of 2026, you will need an ETIAS authorization to enter the Schengen area even as an Australian. And this is where the first issue shows up. The ETIAS application form will ask you directly, do you hold any other citizenship? And now you are faced with a dilemma. If you disclose your STP citizenship, your application is no longer treated as a straightforward, low-risk Australian entry request. Instead, it may be routed into a manual review. And at that point, a human officer is no longer just verifying your passport. They're evaluating why an Australian holds a second passport obtained through non-residency scheme pathway. And that can turn what used to be a 10-minute digital approval into a multi-week clearance process. But now let's say you choose not to disclose it. That's considered material misrepresentation on an immigration application, because ETIAS systems are connected to international law enforcement and identity databases. So any disclosed, undisclosed nationality that shows through the background checks can result in your ETIAS being denied, even on your Australian passport. And in more serious cases, it may lead to multi-year bans from the Schengen area. Now let's bring UK into the picture. Now, as of today, February 25, 2026, the UK has enforced its own electronic travel authorization system for visa-exempt traveler. Just like ETIAS, the UK ETA also requires disclosure of all nationality held. And the UK has taken particular strict position when it comes to certain high-risk citizenship by investment programs. And that means Australians holding passports from emerging or non-compliant programs may see higher rates of ETA refusals, forcing them to apply for a full standard visitor visa instead, even when traveling on their Australian passport. Now let's talk about banking, because this is where things become less visible but far more persistent. Even if you never use your São Tomé passport for travel, if you use it to open a financial account in a third jurisdiction, let's say Mauritius or the Seychelles, the account will eventually be reported under the CRS system, which includes your name, your tax residency, your TIN, and critically, the place of your birth. So even if the account was opened using your STP passport, it can still be linked back to your Australian identity through the shared financial reporting frameworks, which means over time, the connection between your Australian citizenship and your second nationality may surface to domestic tax authorities. That's where some individuals, a lot of our private clients, are now exploring what is known as citizenship by merit options. And at any point in time, if you are interested in evaluating the impact of an existing CBI, let's say you want to mitigate the risk, you want to work for the citizenship by merit option instead, you can always click the link, book a call. We can have a quick chat and see which citizenship by merit may make sense in your situation. So now let's go on down the list. What are the options? What are the safer alternatives? There's citizenship by merit, there's citizenship by naturalization, by contribution pathways, which typically require a residency-based application, skill-based application, entrepreneurship-based applications, and or let's say long-term integration pathways where you strike the residency. Maybe it's a paper residency. They don't yet know what a paper residency is, but you still do some minimum physical presence, put in the right amount of time, establish the right amount of connections to the country, and that's when you get your nationality. Now, that nationality is a lot more powerful than pay for passport schemes, and they're not going to be flagged internationally as paid CBI schemes. So, what are the countries that pop up for CBMs? What are the typical CBM countries? The low-hanging fruits are going to be non-EU European countries, because EU countries are going to be a lot harder. It's going to involve a lot of money. So let's say you look at Austria, it starts from 2 million and goes up. So you're not looking to invest that much. You're looking for low-hanging fruits, straightforward processes. Let's say you're looking for 4 to 6 months for your citizenship. Then the good options to consider are Albania, Georgia, Malta, Serbia. Now, these offer structured routes where citizenship may be obtained through physical presence, recognized economic activity, cultural or scientific contribution, or plain and simple, the traditional way, long-term residency, because these pathways are earned over time rather than purchased outright without relocation. They're generally not treated by banks or border systems as automatic compliance or red flags in the same way the fast-track CBI programs may be viewed. In practice, this can result in smoother financial onboarding, fewer enhanced due diligence triggers, and less scrutiny during travel authorization checks like the ETA or ETIAS. So my final thoughts in 2026, second passports are no longer just mobility tools. They're also compliance signals, and for citizens of already visa strong countries, especially those who don't relocate physically or align tax residency with their new citizenship, that signal may introduce more friction than freedom. All right, I hope you liked this video. If you did, give me a thumbs up and catch you in the next one.